2007's Cloverfield wasn't just a story of destruction. It was more of a biological thriller that goes across space and time and even through the depths of the ocean. Through all this, it introduced us to a monster that will forever be wrapped in mystery because we never really got all the answers for this creature. While some questions may never be answered, let's dive into unraveling every stage of this creature's existence and explore all the various aspects it unleashed during its brief but remarkable appearance. Let's go through the different life stages of the Clover monster and see if we can answer some of the mysteries surrounding this creature. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Clover, the Cloverfield monster. Fresh off the success of Lost, J.J. Abrams had another plan for a creature that would be the perfect answer to the monsters that rule the pop culture. He says, "I wanted a monster movie for so long. I was in Japan over a year ago with my son, who's 8, and all he wanted to do was go to toy stores. We went to all these stores, and there were still all these Godzillas everywhere. What's better than Godzilla?" And I thought, we need our own monster, like we need a monster movie, not like King Kong. I love King Kong. King Kong is adorable, and Godzilla is a charming monster. We love Godzilla, but I wanted something that was just insane and intense. I felt like there had to be a way to do a monster movie that's updated and fresh, so we came up with the YouTubification of things, the ubiquity of video cameras and cell phones with cameras. The age of self-documentation felt like a wonderful prism through which to look at the monster movie. The first movie featuring the Clover monster landed in theaters in 2007's Cloverfield, directed by Matt Reeves. Unlike most common monster films, this was a found footage film, and we only got to see the monster through glimpses as its huge tail whipped between buildings, and then a foot stomped on a car. From that moment onwards, Clover became an essential part of the pop culture, and the mysterious glimpse only increased the real feel of the creature. But it wasn't just gonna be a one-movie attempt, since about 10 years later, we would get a chance to see a bit of the backstory involving the creature. 2018's Cloverfield Paradox tries to answer many questions associated with the beast. It brings to our attention some major exposition as we get to witness an experiment that tore open the very fabric of reality. While we were wondering about what happened to the creature, the final shot of the 2018 film showed a fully grown Clover, which meant that we hadn't seen the Clover in its full operational form yet. So, Clover became an essential part of the pop culture. Now, before we go into the creature's life cycle, we'll just go through a brief anatomical exploration of this creature as it plays an essential role in understanding the various changes it goes through as it evolves and adapts. Standing several stories tall, Clover is a quadrupedal creature with a triple-jointed front limb structure and multi-fingered hands bent backwards. So yeah, this creature can do one of those knuckle walks that seem to have an eerily simian grace. With its angular and sharp head, which has two large back pupilled eyes that indicate light vision, the creature's face can be rather haunting because it lacks clear definition. I mean, the beast must have been Spielberg's Jaws, because it did manage to make sure it hardly appeared properly on screen to keep the fear alive till the end. Now let's jump into this creature's life cycle as we closely analyze every appearance the beast has made. The birth of a giant. Even after sufficient research, no proper information could be acquired regarding the entire birth and origin aspect of the Clover. But there's a clear chance it might be similar to Japan's friendly neighborhood monster Godzilla, known for having that mythical nuclear birth. At the same time, future entries in the franchise, particularly Cloverfield Paradox, might have indicated that Clover's origin could be similar to the case of the kaiju from Pacific Rim, who were cultivated in breeding vats that had access through an interdimensional gateway. So basically, we divide the origin arc for this creature into a mix of both the synthesis of nature and a cosmic anomaly. You might have seen the Clover monster in the bustling streets of Manhattan, but that's probably not where it begins. I say probably just in case they change lore. Digging deep into the entire marketing process of these films, it seems that Clover might be coming from the deep depths of the Atlantic Ocean, deep enough that even light has a difficult time seeping through. Based on the words of the creators and lore, it seems that the Clover is an ancient life form that thrives on a unique substance called the seabed nectar. The Japanese conglomerate Tagruato would extract the same compound as a sustenance and a developmental catalyst. So basically, the seabed nectar is behind the monstrous growth of our beloved monster. Now, humans also consume it because this powerful and addictive nectar is one of the key ingredients for slusho, a bubbly and colorful beverage known to have some mind-altering properties. While the humans have a different impact, the nectar acts like how the X gene acts for the X-Men, as it triggers the biological bloom in the abyssal megafauna. So in simpler terms, it's more like rocket fuel to the Clovers. So the next time you go for slusho, be aware that there's a monster utilizing that drink for more benefits than you probably ever will. During one of their routine drills at the Chuai station for the nectar, there's a chance that Tagruato managed to wake up Clover, or this particular event might have catalyzed the creature's growth. So yeah, some company that makes a slushy or similar cold drink managed to wake up a titan-like monster from its nutrient bath in an embryonic stage. We say embryonic stage because the first time we saw this creature out and about, it had a rather awkward pattern. The creators, particularly Neville Page, indicate that the creature was a baby when we saw the Clover for the first time at about 350 feet tall. So yeah, don't go on the size, but look at how the skin is soft-looking, light gray, and almost has a look of not having had any chance to harden due to the environment. So in simpler words, you can imagine the Clover being a frog just out of the tadpole stage, but somehow managing to be supercharged by an energy drink. But right when it was able to get out of the ocean and ended up in the Big Apple, we see a clear growth from the monster. And yes, we have to mention that the Big Apple incident was all to be blamed on the drilling mishap. Out of the water. The first steps. According to Neville Page, the awkward proportions of the creature that we got to witness at the Big Apple, particularly the long forelimbs for knuckle walking, smaller hind limbs, and multi-joined appendages, clearly indicate it hasn't yet adapted fully to terrestrial locomotion. He's much like a newborn giraffe or an early-stage xenomorph from the Alien franchise. It's still growing into its body and processing a world it barely understands. But if you look at it from the idea of an infant being suddenly exposed to the whole world after being woken up, it would surely be a daunting experience. The same was the case for the young Clover, who had just transitioned from the depths of the ocean to the sensory overload that is New York. So yeah, this particular phase will mostly be associated with the absolute confusion that the creature faces as it experiences what can be called a sensory delirium. We might have seen the beast wreaking havoc in the city, but it makes sense once you imagine that it's all a reaction to the sudden transition. There's no malice here. Instead, it's just a disoriented and directionless response to everything surrounding the creature. In scientific terms, one can determine this phase as sensory calibration and trying to come to terms with the weight that has suddenly shifted after moving out of the ocean's depths. One can observe that the fleshy sacs above the eyes of the creature inflate when it breathes, and that might just be a dual respiratory system, which is in line with amphibians when they shift from gills to lung-based breathing. Every aspect of the creature at this stage is all about coming to terms with the present state of things, and that's why even the reaction to the artillery fire could be understood as fear instead of pure rage. What further supports this theory is that when weapons attack the Clover, it doesn't shift into some sort of defensive position or tactic that a monster generally would after a certain amount of experience. Even the destructive pattern is so random and confusing that it often feels completely unintentional upon closer inspection. One can best define it as one of those times when the Hulk is completely out of Banner's consciousness and goes into a rampage at anything that is around him. The next step can be triggered by this shock too, but we'll try to explore it properly because it might just be an essential stage in the life of a Clover. This stage is expected of an early-born creature that has undergone a sudden transition and been pushed into absolute chaos. It might fear the reaction of the scared people around it as much as the humans feared it. A rather tragic event, one might note. Molting. Now, there are two major possibilities regarding the next stage in the creature's life cycle. The first one sticks to the scared and adaptive stage, as the parasites that shed out of the clover and scatter around the streets might just be its stress pheromones. These parasites might have understood the clover's position and decided to go into a complete action mode with the prompts defend, attack, or evacuate. However, another possible theory surrounding this creature stage suggests that it might be the next step in the creature's evolution after stabilizing and adapting to the conditions. The clover starts molting with the shedding of the parasitic organisms, giving us a grotesque view. While most creatures undergo the process of molting, where they shed their exoskeleton discard, the clover seems to have the added feature of symbiotic expulsion. It also ends up shedding creatures that are genetically linked to the clover, which might have been an essential part of the underwater gestation of the beast. Even though it seems like something that will be an essential part of the creature's next big steps, this growth has an interesting aspect with the biological impact these other organisms have from the clover. During the process, the clover seems to offload some sort of responsibility and aggression onto the microorganisms. Referred to as a post-birth ritual, it's meant to be a metabolic and symbolic stage in the creature's life, as it removes those parts of its body that no longer seem necessary in the present terrestrial environment. Even these parasitic organisms appear to be some sort of expelled antibody, as they were probably once important to the creature. Still, now they serve their biological goals, which the beast might have also assigned. Now, we cannot just jump back to the life cycle of the clover without looking into the nightmarish engineering of the human-scale parasites that the creature sheds. They seem to have a predatory nature as they swarm into the city with dog-sized bodies, wall-crawling horrors packed into them, and a crab-like gait. You are instantly reminded of the arachnid creatures that appeared in Starship Troopers, and even the facehuggers themselves from the Alien films. However, one peculiarity about them is their obsessive movement that completely contrasts with the clover. Right when they get on the ground, they seem to be tracking down their enemy with intent and chase after them with persistence. Their bites instantly impact the humans with hemorrhaging in the eyes and finally lead to a torso rupture. Another important factor to be noticed here is that these organisms don't fall off the body of the creature and instead crawl out of slits and other orifices as if they're heading out with a purpose. Some of them are even shaken loose during certain high-impact contacts that the creature itself faces, and all of them seem to be bound to the clover through what appears to be some sort of external digestive tract that dangles like an elongated tendril, like an esophagi. The concept art of the creature suggests that these are supposed to be used as a means of consuming the prey for the sake of the host. Basically, the creature manages to outsource its feeding through the parasites. Finally, the clover has indicated that it is not just a singular organism, but more like a complex ecosystem of such organisms. As the molting phase ends, the clover heads into a new phase because it's gained sufficient maturity and can deal with matters independently, while the other organisms wreak havoc on its behalf. The adaptation phase. By now, the clover has managed to get a lay of the land and can focus on completing the adaptation process and recalibrating itself to fit into the ecosystem. At this stage, it's not throwing off things and destroying them since the focus has shifted more towards physically and mentally adjusting to the terrestrial environment. Yeah, the monster is no longer fighting for survival. It's learning and adapting at a pace that clearly indicates how dangerous this creature can be. One of the very first steps towards this phase can be seen with the change in the behavioral pattern of the creature as it starts acting a lot more deliberately instead of showing erratic movement in reaction to the surroundings. The beast even pauses while the pouches around its eye inflate, indicating some sort of olfactory or auditory process at play here. Another big indication of this phase is the drying of the outer skin, since the mucus-based layer is completely replaced by something much more durable. But apart from from all that, there's the one event where we witness the one time that some injury is inflicted on the creature. The bleeding in this case is not conventional at all, and there's an instant fibrous clotting reaction that seems like a carbonized collagen knitting together right after impact. Even the dangling esophageal tendrils seem to be replaced by some rather efficient appendages, indicating that they're more active towards attacking or some other gesture suitable for surface prey. So in a way, at this stage, the creature has already shifted its position from an intruder to something that's making itself a lot more comfortable. Like an occupier, the creature responds to every aspect of the things around it as if it has a motive now, and it's seeking out a particular space, which might either be for nesting or for developing some new biochemical solution inside its body to react to the attacks from its surroundings. While it looks like the last stage of the creature, one can almost witness that this is where the character has begun to shift gears into occupying this space and thus take on a position where the people might be in danger. Yep, it sounds scarier when you analyze every aspect of the creature's behavior and come to the part where it seems like it's become intelligent and is laying out a plan. Final destination. While we are much clearer about the first few phases of the Clover's life cycle, the final stages around the end are quite ambiguous based on what we've witnessed until now. So this stage will adhere to whatever we can think of as possibilities for the creature around the end, based on the idea of usual tropes like mythical disappearance or evolutionary uncertainty. We saw that the Clover could withstand a wide range of attacks, ranging from bombs to carpet airstrikes, and yet it only sustained some minimal injury. It almost felt like something from the pages of Marvel Comics, or even a creation of Lovecraft, considering the creature clearly doesn't obey the rules of our biology. Right around the end of Cloverfield, the military conducts their final bombing run, codenamed Hammer Down Protocol, and right then, the camera cuts to black, and we're left wondering about the outcome of this final attempt at killing the creature. J.J. Abrams has mostly been vague about the beast, and yet the only solid answer from him regarding the creature's fate of the bombing indicates that, yes, the final bombing did manage to kill it. But there was more, as the final scene, an event that actually takes place before the film's events, shows an object falling from the sky into the ocean. When asked about what that particular object might be, and if that was the arrival of the very Clover that we witnessed in the film, Abrams stated, "We crafted two theories of how that worked. We may choose to play on one of them if we take the story further." And that's as vague as it could be. Yet Matt Reeves indicated a completely different interpretation of the final sequence. According to him, about the origin of the Clover, it's alien. In fact, at the end of the movie, you can see the moment when it comes to Earth. It's another one of those little Easter egg moments, but when we revisit that footage, where they're on the Ferris wheel at the end, you can see the meteor flying down and hitting the ocean. That's actually the beginning of the baby being on Earth. So, with all this confusion in hand, we'll go to a possible theory for the final stage of the Clover, where it returns to the ocean, something that clearly acts like an important part of the creature's life cycle. Taking inspiration from the likes of Godzilla and other such monsters, there's a chance that the Clover retreats to the ocean and then simply vanishes into the abyss, injured but not defeated. But what if there's more to the Clover than we might have expected? And this is just the beginning. What if the hammer down strike managed to do the opposite and further triggered the creature's growth, accelerating the transformation and thus giving birth to something way worse and terrifying? In pop culture terms, the Clover's end is something that would now become a rather popular arc of incompleteness. There's no indication whether the character lived or died, but we can be sure that there's a chance that we will see this monster again, and it's still out there, evolving. The Clover is not finished, and based on the flow of the movies, the Clover's rampage in New York might just be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the hell that this creature will unleash here. Legacy. The idea of reproduction is an important aspect for the monster, and it plays a major role in any such creature's legacy. We haven't been introduced to the concept of the creature that deals with such elements in its life cycle, but based on the creature's behavior in New York, we can only construct some ideas about how it works in that aspect of its life cycle. The shedding part, where the creature releases the human-scale parasites, might just be a part of an asexual propagation through parasite shedding. Instead of a proper reproductive mechanism, maybe the beast has an asexual means of propagation, wherein the body of the creature itself acts like a living factory for new life. But then there's something that we witnessed in the third and final entry into the Cloverfield trilogy, Cloverfield Paradox. According to that arc, the Clover species is not confined to a single world and can propagate across dimensions because of an evolutionary trait. As we witnessed the Shepherd particle accelerator tear a hole through space-time, an entire species emerges from another plane of reality, thus indicating that the creatures can enter universes where they can survive based on the environmental conditions. So this leads to a whole new mannerism in which this creature propagates, since now they can be considered interdimensional apex seeds that don't work on the idea of biology, but arrive through quantum ruptures. And all of this seems like an experiment conducted by a higher dimensional being. Another important aspect of the character that became essential right when we saw it for the first time is the fact that it seems to have an unfinished state. Yes, the Clover appears to be more of a living code that is ready to evolve further, gestating future offspring and variants once it reaches full maturity. Marvelous verdict. While the creators behind the franchise kept confusing us about the origins of the Clover monster, one can see that some major planning was put into the character's design and behavior. It might not be clear at first glance in the film, but eventually you realize that the monster behaved in a specific manner that only added to the mystery surrounding it. Each time we aren't told about a certain aspect of the Clover monster, it's almost as if the fandom for the creature increases, just in parallel to the intrigue around the franchise. Even though we'll be waiting for the rumored fourth film in the Cloverfield franchise, Abrams' original intentions to create an original monster seem successful. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.